Mm-hmm.
All right, bro. How was your day today?
It's 9:30 in the morning.
Good morning.
It's good. Woke up around 8, like right as you called me, actually.
Thanks for doing this, bro. I really appreciate it.
Heck yeah, dude. Anything to help.
Sir. All right, so we'll just get straight into the questions, bro.
Okay.
Tell me a little about Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
About my childhood. So I've got 2 sisters. My parents were married for probably 4 years.
Right.
And then they divorced back, I think I was around 6 years old. They moved us around a lot. We were in California. My dad took a sales job out there. And then we moved to Lubbock, Texas. And then that's where they got divorced. And then my mom met this guy, Rick, who
when they got divorced?
I think like 6. Yeah, my littlest sister, my youngest sister, Kelsey, was just born. So she, I was about 5 or 6 years old. So I don't really remember them together. And then after that, it was, just a series of random boyfriends on my mom's side. My dad moved back to Colorado. We stayed with my mom in Texas. And we kind of were just moving around for like probably the last 10 years after that. And then ultimately ended up back here in Colorado when I was about 13.
Yeah.
That's where I just spent the rest of my youth in Fort Collins before moving to Denver.
What were your dreams as a child?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I remember wanting to be an actor when I was younger.
Yeah.
I used to love Jim Carrey, Robin Williams. I wanted to be like those guys. I always thought I was funnier than I would think I was. So yeah, probably acting would have been a dream of mine. But I mean, I don't know where that changed somewhere along the line, but it did. The acting thing kind of just went away. I mean, I didn't do anything to pursue it. I didn't do any plays in high school or nothing. I just, kind of just faded away. So, outside of that, I was always the family guy. I always wanted a big family. So that somewhere after the fact kind of became a goal of mine. Not necessarily a dream, but definitely a goal of mine. Was to be a dad, have a family. And I was on the path to do that. And then, life changed. I was 24 and I was engaged. And then, it just, things didn't work out. So after that, I kind of became not cynical about having a family. I just put it on hold, and so it got pushed aside.
Tell me about your relationship with your dad.
Best dude I know, for sure. My dad, funniest guy ever. Everyone loved him. So likable. But he had a lot of vices and things that I didn't know about as a kid that I came to find out later. Big time gambler, loved to gamble, huge gambling family, as a matter of fact. He and my uncle, that's what they did. They ran card games in Denver. I grew up in a poker room, essentially. And so I thought that was cool. I wanted to be like my dad. That's probably why I golf and the other things I do. He is also a professional musician, which, it's pretty mind-blowing how talented he is. And I kind of also want to be on that musical side of things. But yeah, he and I's relationship was great. I think that if I were to have sided with somebody when I was younger, I probably would have leaned toward my dad, just because, I felt like my mom was making decisions that were best for her and not necessarily best for us as kids. And I just always felt like my dad got kind of the short end of the stick when it came to that divorce. And he did everything he could, you know. I mean, he was living here in Colorado when we were in Texas. I mean, he would drive down 2 times a month all the way from Denver to Austin just to see us for 2 days and drive all the way back. I mean, he was a really great dad. So yeah, our relationship was always really, really tight.
How'd you feel? How'd your dad make you feel?
He always was encouraging. You know, he always made me feel really good. He supported me in everything that I would do, and you know, he always tried to offer advice where he could, but he never pushed or put down or, you know, deterred from what I was trying to do. He was just super encouraging and motivating, and did the best he could. You know, he's not a wealthy dude, but he helped where he could, and he I mean, he always made me feel loved and accepted, and I mean, yeah, he was really warm and comforting in that way.
What about your relationship with your mom?
Also really good. Definitely different than with my dad. My mom, like I said, I didn't know this when I was growing up, but she suffered from bipolar disorder as well as anxiety and depression. So, you know, as a kid, I didn't understand it. I mean, my mom was 25 by the time she had all 3 of us, which now looking back, I mean, I'm 32. I'm going, my God, how do you have 3 kids at 25, you know? And made it work, which was even crazier, you know? And so when she was younger, at that age, she was probably just scared to be a single mom, but she was in and out of just super shitty relationships, you know, abusive guys. And, you know, she would always choose those relationships over me and my sisters because she was codependent. She was scared of not having somebody. She was always like just latching on to these guys for either support or comfort or whatever purpose it served her. And so when I was younger, that built a lot of resentment in me for her, just because, you know, it's hard when your mom chooses a guy that you feel she barely knows over you, you know?
How did that feel as a kid?
Oh, it was brutal, man. I one time I gave my mom an ultimatum. This guy Rick.
How old were you during?
I think I was like 10. I was in the 3rd grade. I know I was in the 3rd grade for sure because I went and lived with my dad for a couple of years. But I was just tired of it. You know, he was verbally abusive, physically abusive. I just said, you know, you got to choose. It's either us or him. And she chose him, and I left. And that was that. And
When you were 10.
yeah.
What'd you tell her exactly?
I just told her, I said, you know, I don't want to see you live like this, and I definitely know I can't live like this. So I need you.
As a 10-year-old, tell me.
Oh, dude, I mean, it was heartbreaking, man. You know, and I think I pushed it down super deep, you know, for a long time. But, you know, I mean, to her credit, man, you know, she still holds on to it to this day. She won't let it go, even though I have. You know, I never hold it over her head.
Point you left?
Yeah, when I was 10, I left, yeah. I lived with my dad. I lived with him for about a year and a half. Both my sisters were back in Texas. And then one night, my mom showed up in Colorado. She basically kidnapped me. Somehow she got into my dad's house. I was staying there. It was late at night, and she told me, she's like, we're gonna go get ice cream or something. And I was just so happy to see her. I hadn't seen her in like a year and a half. And so we hopped in a car. I fell asleep. Next thing I know, I wake up and we're in the middle of nowhere, Texas. And she, yeah, you know, basically begged and pleaded with me to forgive her and to forgive the guy she was with. He ended up being there when I woke up that morning. He was like in this parking lot or something. I can't remember.
And how old are you?
At that point I was like 11, almost 12. And so I knew at that point, I think she just needed me in her life for some reason. I didn't know the reason at the time. And then I ended up obviously being there with her for about another year. And then it just kind of, it all came to a head. You know, she finally left him. She said she can do it on her own. We were in and out of different apartments and stuff like that for probably 6 months. And then finally we flew my sisters to Colorado, and then her and I loaded a U-Haul van up and drove it straight back here to Colorado. Didn't look back. But it was a bumpy road for sure, you know. And she probably didn't get over her codependency and her bipolar and her anxiety, you know, well until I was maybe out of the house by that time. You know, I was 17 or 18.
How was it living with someone with those issues?
Oh, it was crazy. I had no idea what was happening. Like, I would be in the living room, we'd be watching a movie, and she was just very loving, and then all of a sudden she would be upset with me for something I had no idea what I did. And so as a kid, I was just very confused. I had no idea what I did wrong. And you know, when you're a kid, you try and pinpoint what you did so you don't repeat it and you don't get in trouble or you don't make your mom upset again or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it was tough. It caused me to rebel. I went through a phase, I remember, you know, where I was just like sneaking out of the house. I was hanging out with, you know, kids that were doing drugs, and, you know, even though that wasn't for me, that wasn't my thing. I wanted to be away from her and from her relationships as much as I possibly could. So, you know, it was pretty detrimental into my, you know, going into those like teenage years, because I just didn't want to be around her. I didn't know how to be around her, you know. So I wasn't. I tried to be as far away as possible.
So I know you said it felt brutal. That's how you described it. I mean, there's obviously so many more emotions with that. You know, how does it feel on the day to day where if you don't know if she's gonna be nice or if she's gonna be mean? Like, how's describe that feeling?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I mean, like I said, I try not to be there as much as possible, because then if I'm not there, situations can't happen. You know what I mean? She can't yell at me for something I didn't do if I'm not there. So, I mean, emotionally, you know, it felt like I had to just keep an arm's length with my mom. Because yeah, I didn't want to deal with it. I think you do initially, you deal with it long enough, and then you can't figure it out, or it doesn't change, and then you just go, well, okay, then I'm just, you know, like it's not smart of me to keep doing the same thing expecting different results. So, you know, inevitably I just said, I just won't be around you. So yeah, emotionally though, it's just confusing, you know, and it was sad. I mean, it was sad for both of us. It was sad for her. I didn't know what was wrong with her, and I knew something was wrong. I mean, I knew that she couldn't leave bad relationships. I knew that, you know, she was very all over the place emotionally. I mean, going from happy to sad to happy to sad. So yeah, it was crazy.
What lessons did you learn? The big things that you learned from your mom and your dad?
My mom was probably the hardest worker ever. She really instilled like strong work ethic in me. That I can say for certain. I mean, she did anything and everything she could to support us and make sure that we were good. You know, she would bag groceries. She, you know, cleaned houses. She did any type of job she could. She was the most determined person I'd ever known to that point. Not that my dad wasn't. I just wasn't around him at that time to see that. You know, and then for my dad, I mean, it was just the way he treated people, the way he interacted socially, and just he was just great with human beings in general. and very compassionate. So, you know, he instilled a lot of that in me. My mom, ironically, is pretty opposite of that. My mom's not a very warm, loving type of person at all. I mean, if I got sick, she didn't want to be anywhere within a 20-mile radius, you know. Whereas my dad, I mean, he didn't even care. He was there with soup, with blankets, with whatever I needed. So, you know, I got that more compassionate side from my dad, but I got that kind of work ethic and that drive from my mom, which is, you know, served me well even to this day. So.
Tell me about your first love and all the emotions you felt with it.
Ooh, my first love?
Yeah.
Brittany Gooden. I hope she never sees this. And I was in 9th grade. And, you know, it's just... But it's like, is it love, though?
It's like, whatever you think your first love is, bro.
Yeah. I thought it was love.
Okay, I mean, if this is
at that time, I thought it was love.
So this is the first everything.
100%. She would also say that I was her first love, okay, without question. But yeah, I look back on it and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if did we love each other? But we were together. So we were together. She was my first high school sweetheart. She was the girl I first lost my virginity to. And we went through everything together. You know, I got her pregnant when she was 15. And that was its own whole thing, man. I mean, I didn't know what to do. 15 years old, I'm going, oh my God, like, this is before MTV even started filming shows like that. You know, we were like the original. And so I told her, I said, you know, I support you, whatever you want to do. If you want to get, you know, an abortion, because at that time, that's the way she was leaning. I was like, I support that. And if you want to keep it, we'll keep it and we can figure that out. And she was so concerned about her parents like disowning her over it and the whole thing. And so at that time, right before she had gotten pregnant, you used to have to get parental consent to even have an abortion. Right. Like, you know, we were 15 years old. I think you had to be 16 to do it on your own. And they had just passed that law where you actually didn't need parental consent. So we were able to hide it that way. The other issue we ran into was that it was like $700 or something along that line, which might as well have been $2 million at that point, because I didn't have a job. Yeah. You know, I mean, she didn't have a job, couldn't go to my parents. What do? What is $700? Yeah. We got to tell somebody, you know. But my best friend, and he still is to this day, he had been working already for probably a year, maybe a year and a half, and that was like his life savings, basically. I mean, he had it, and he gave it to me without question. Said, "Listen, if y'all need this money, no problem. I know you'll pay me back one day." And so, you know, we had the money. We were able to do it. And I said, you know, do you still want to go through with it? And she said, you know, yes. So then what they do is they make you take you got to sit through this class essentially. And they give you all the information, you know, about where the baby's at in this phase, you know, like what they've already developed, you know, and where they're going to be and blah, blah, blah. And it's just gut wrenching, you know, you're sitting there, you're going, oh my God. Like, I guess the idea, I don't know, if it's not to scare you out of not doing it, then it's just to give you all the facts. But, you know, I, after hearing it, did not want to do it. She still felt like she wanted to go through with it. And so she did. And after that, I think that's where we kind of started to fall apart. This, you know, we were together on and off, like every high school relationship. You know, we broke up, we got back together, we broke up, we got back together. Then there was a point in time I thought I was slick, you know, I was just hitting her up for sex, you know, thinking like, well, I can make her think we're together without actually having to be with her. And I was just, I'll be honest, you know, in high school too, I was such a dick. I feel so bad because I did at one point. I loved her, you know, and I just treated her like shit. And sometimes I wonder about it to this day, like, but even to this day when I see her out, she still lives in Fort Collins. We still have a ton of mutual friends. So even when I see her out and stuff, it's just like I see that 15-year-old that I first saw that I was infatuated with. And sometimes it brings back all those memories, and then it takes about 5 seconds and I go, oh no, we were never meant to be together. It's just, we're two different people, especially now, but even then I think. But no, it was fun.
How'd she make you feel? Describe her feeling.
She made me feel like I was the coolest guy on the planet. She made me feel like everything I did was amazing, and she put me on a pedestal, and I felt important around her, and I felt like needed. It's cool to have someone like put that much into you, that much trust and emotion and willingness and care. She just like unencumbedly gave herself to me 100%. And and I did for a while as well, but there was a point, I can't 100% pinpoint it, but there was a point I kind of lost it. I didn't have that feeling anymore, and it sucks for her, because I know that she still did. And it was hard. Dude, that breakup was messy for sure. But yeah, she made me feel awesome for a long time.
Tell me about your first loss or heartbreak and how that felt.
First loss, first heartbreak. I mean, the first death that I really experienced was my mom's dad. So I had two grandpas essentially. Her mom, my grandmother, remarried before I was even born, right? So there was my grandpa David, who I knew my whole life as my grandpa David, though he was through marriage only. Her dad, her real dad, was also my grandfather, but he lived in California. I didn't see him quite as often, but he passed away super young. I mean, he was 56, died of a heart attack. And at that time I was like 15, and that was the first time I ever experienced knowing death, and so that was my first loss, which was tough, and probably my first heartbreak. We weren't as close as me and my other grandpa, but I mean, I had a great relationship with him. He taught me a lot, and oddly enough, he had just moved to Colorado about a year before he had passed away. He had never lived near us my whole life, so it was really exciting to possibly get to know him better and be around him more. And yeah, like I think within a year he ended up passing away. So that was pretty tough.
How'd you hear about his passing?
My mom, I think.
When you heard the news, what'd you do?
I think I was just in shock. It takes a lot for me to like emotionally let go, like I didn't cry about it or anything until the day of his funeral when we were actually burying him. Just that concept, that realization that this will literally be the last time I get to say goodbye to him or see him or be near him. And that type of finality really like resonated with me in a really impactful way. So, I was kind of an emotional wreck the day of his funeral, but yeah, the news initially just kind of was like shocking.
How old were you?
Yeah, I think I was like 14 or 15. The other thing that I tend to do too is, with bad news and stuff, I always feel this sense that I need to be the stronger one because I'm the oldest. Again, I grew up with single mom and younger sisters, so I always try and protect them and make sure they're okay first, and then deal with my stuff at a later date. So I think that had something to play into that as well. But yeah, it was pretty shocking initially.
Who first taught you love and how?
My dad, for sure. For sure. My mom, it was tough to even get a hug out of her. Seriously, she wasn't emotional. She didn't like to show affection in that way. I knew she loved me. She just didn't physically like to show her love, you know. My dad, again, it was just the most emotional guy you probably ever meet. This guy, I mean, he loved to hug and just cuddle, and you know, he was always saying terms of affirmation. He was always telling me how much he loved us and how proud of us he was, and you know, and that felt really good. And I employed that in my own life, you know, still to this day, you know, even with my own sisters, I make sure every phone call, every text ends with "I love you, I love you, I love you." And my mom, ultimately, she came around. It took a long time. But yeah, I remember as a kid, I'd hug her, and when I felt like she was pulling away, I just squeezed her even harder. You know, I would just hang on to her until she understood, like, no, like, it's okay to be right here. You don't have to pull away. It's not weird to show your kids that you love them. And that hug lasted longer and longer, but I wasn't the one having to hold on. You know what I mean? She would naturally just start to hug back. It was awesome, but it took forever. So yeah, my dad initially was the guy who taught me love.
What's love to you, and has it always been the same, or has it changed? If not, what was it before compared to what it is now?
Well, that's tough. So love to me now is just like a willingness and an understanding, having a compassion for somebody, even though maybe you don't necessarily like them at that time, but you're always willing to be there for them no matter what. You know, even if they mess up, it doesn't matter how many times they've messed up or how many times they've burned you, you know, it's just that willingness that no matter what, I'm always going to be there for that person, you know. And I feel that way with my sisters, my family, obviously, you know, and that probably wasn't the case. You know, I probably thought love was innate, like it was just given, like because they're my sisters or they're whomever, you know, that it was just I had to feel a certain way about them, you know. And I think that's where I started to differentiate the difference between liking and loving somebody, because you know, the older I got, I didn't like certain things that my mom did or that my sisters did, or you know, God, I remember Kaylin and I, we would fight constantly, but there was always this just willingness on my part to like want to help her or want to, you know, make sure she was okay. And that's when I started to realize that like love was much more than just that feeling initially, that willingness, you know, to want to help somebody else. And I used to also think I loved everyone. When I was younger, I was like, I love this person, you know. In that, you know, knowing the difference between love and infatuation too was that took some learning, you know. Again, when you asked me about my first love or girlfriend, you know, I look back and I go, was that love or was that infatuation? Because do I still have that same willingness to like want to be there for them to this day? You know, and with Brittany, if I thought about it long enough, I mean, I would. You know, if she needed something, I'd be there for her for sure. But, you know, there were other relationships in my life that I confused that with real love. And, no, you know, now knowing what I know, you know, it wasn't. So, yeah, love's tough, though. Love is, I mean, how do you describe love, you know?
You just did.
Yeah, I guess for me, I think though, I mean, that answer is probably different for a lot of people, but yeah. Now I'm starting to think I didn't love anyone ever.
Love's a willingness to to help. I mean, that's a beautiful explanation for it, for sure. Willingness to always help.
Yeah.
That is love. Can you tell me about a good day for you?
A good day?
It's a good day. Generic good day in the life of...
In my life?
The life of Ryan DeGeorge.
I mean, good days for me are just filled. They're filled days. You know what I mean? I have plans. I have things that I'm doing that I'm looking forward to doing, you know? So, you know, like take today, for instance, this interview with you. I'm doing the Avs game tonight. You know, so those to me are great days. You know, the days that they fly by, and then, you know, I look forward to doing these things throughout the day, and you know, the expectation meets reality. You know, like if I'm expecting the night to go a certain direction and it actually does, that's the best day for me. You know, just filled with happiness, fun. I don't like anything to be dramatic. I mean, I don't know why life even has to be a lot of the times, you know. To me, I feel like life is so easy to be happy in. If you're having fun, you're surrounding yourself with the right type of people, you know. And so for me, I mean, those good days are often filled with friends, family, people I hold near and dear to me, and we just have the best times, you know.
Tell me about a bad day and how you push through it.
Bad days are, you know, when I'm just like, I'm not motivated personally, professionally. My days are wasted, you know. I don't do anything productive. I don't get outside. I just kind of hibernate and you know, I just sit there and drown in a sea of my own weird thoughts and feelings, and you know, I'm very distant, closed off to other people. And those days only usually happen when I'm depressed about something, you know, or if, you know, maybe I don't even know that I'm depressed about something, but like I've, you know, been drinking a lot, or I've been, you know, kind of doing things outside of the norm of what I usually do, you know. Like if I don't get into a routine for myself, then I start to find these days, you know. I'm actually worried, or started to worry, that like this would be the case for me, you know, now not having this 9 to 5, because, you know, at least then I was on a schedule, I was regimented. Now when you don't have that schedule, then, you know, you it's easy to fall into these traps, these negative routines, right, you know, where I have no repercussions. Sure, I can go out drinking tonight because I don't have anything to do tomorrow. That concept of not having anything to do tomorrow means that I'm not motivating myself to do anything. I didn't fill my days. I didn't plan anything for myself other than to just sit around and do nothing. So, you know, those, when I look back on it, those tend to be my absolute worst days, you know. I guess, you know, how I push through it would just be telling myself, like, hey man, you know, you're doing great. You're on a really nice trajectory. You had all these goals, these plans. Just because now something didn't go 100% your way, or you're faced with a little bit of adversity, doesn't mean you have to just give up completely. Stay motivated, stay positive, you know. And then I have to, sometimes I remind myself of like my sisters and my friends who have a lot of adversity in their own lives. And I think like, man, like how selfish of me to not want to push through when these guys are out there, and some of them have it way worse than I do, you know. My little sister, man, she gets up every day, she goes to a job that she absolutely hates, and she does it for money that is not a lot, you know. I mean, she doesn't make a ton, and you know, she still does it. I don't know that when she does it, it's easy for her, but I know that she still does it. You know, she still gets up. She makes a conscious decision to keep going on the path that she's on. So for me, like I said, it's just like I got to remind myself of others that are also going through the same type of struggle, and realizing, like, in the grand scheme of things, I don't have it that bad, you know? Yeah. Life could be way worse. And I think people can make their lives worse than they are, or the direction they're going. And you have that ability to, like, when you come to that fork in the road, say, I'm not going down that path. I want to make this a good day. I want to, you know. And so just conscious efforts of thought, you know, usually help get me through that type of a thing.
What are 2 things or events or people that have shaped you, good or bad? How do you feel when you reflect on those?
2 events or 2 people that shaped my life?
Yeah.
Jeez. Oh, man, that's tough.
You could boil it down to one, if just one. I mean,
I'm trying to think.
One is much more impactful than the other.
Impacted my life.
Shaped you.
Man, that's a good question. I don't know that I can, like, pinpoint one thing. I think it's a series of things for sure, you know, that impact your life.
What are a few big series?
You know, I just think that, like, you go through phases in your life, right? If I were to look back on my life, let's say from where I'm at right now until, let's say I go back as far as, like, when I was 15, right? Just the groups of friends that you chose to hang out with, you know, the decisions you made, good or bad. You know, I look back, like, junior high, you know, the crowd that I fell in with, and then you graduate high school, right? So that was one phase, you know, your junior high school years, right? Then hopefully you try and be better than you were in those years, right? Now, hopefully, right? And now you're heading into your, like, oh, I'm about to be in my 20s, you know? And then I look at my 20s, even that, I can look at that in phases. You know, I was engaged. I had a great relationship through part of my, you know, early 20s. And then when we broke up, I kind of fell into a hole, and I was not doing so great in my mid 20s. And then I got tired of, you know, being worthless essentially for 3 years. And, you know, heading into my late 20s, I was motivated. You know, I wanted to travel more professionally. I wanted to grow. And then, you know, you got into my 30s, and you know, your goals change, your priorities change. So I can't really pinpoint. I did, I know for one thing, I had a gambling problem. I had a gambling addiction when I was in my early 20s. And the one thing that actually did impact me now, where I'm not gambling, I'm not going down that path that I was going down, was because of my little sister Kelsey. And the reason for that was the lowest point I'd gotten to with my gambling addiction was losing rent. I knew rent was due. I had the money, and I still made a conscious decision to try and double that, knowing I didn't have any outlets. I had no options, right? My mom was done giving me money. She wasn't going to support my gambling addiction. My dad physically couldn't give me money because he was broke from his own, you know, addictions. And I had no one to turn to except for my little sister, Kelsey, who at that time was just starting out in college. She had student loan money, and asking her for $1,200 at that point in time might as well have been like asking her for $1 million, you know? And I remember when she gave me the money, because she did. She just said, okay, you need this, I'll give it to you. But she made me swear to her I would not gamble anymore. And, you know, you can't break a promise to your sister. Pretty sure you go to hell for that kind of thing, you know? And so I just remember her handing me the money, and right then and there I was like, I can't lie to her. More importantly, I can't let her down. So, you know, the gambling thing's got to stop. And it did. I mean, I just that one instant with her handing me money because I couldn't pay my own rent, I felt pathetic. I mean, I'm her older brother. You know, I should have been protecting her. She's the one who should come to me if she needs help financially or otherwise. And the fact that I had to, you know, I'm 24 years old and I'm groveling to my little sister, borrowing student loan money, I was pathetic. So, you know, that I'll never forget that. And it actually probably was the best thing that ever happened to me. You know, in hindsight, I'm glad that I lost rent because it forced me to ask Kelsey for the money, and then inevitably, you know, ended my gambling addiction for the most part. So.
When you reflect on that, how does it feel when you, from her giving you the money for the reason she had to give you the money, what emotions do you attach with that?
Disappointment in myself, for sure. You know, there was nothing more disappointing than, I mean, my little sister idolized me. You know, I was her big brother. I was her hero for many years. And I think that was the first time she ever looked at me and just saw someone different. She saw someone she never wanted to see, or that I ever wanted her to see. So it was like kind of the first time I think she, you know, realized I was a human being. I think she held me on a pedestal so many years throughout our life. I never wanted to make the wrong move around her. You know, I always wanted to be that way in her eyes, you know. And so it humanized me for her a little bit, but she needed that. I mean, especially, you know, going into college, she was going to start to realize, like, not everyone's as great as they are. Everyone has flaws. Everyone, you know, has vices and adversity that they face in their life. So, you know, I'm not mad that she saw that, but I'm very disappointed that she had to, you know, look at me like I was somebody different. It was like she just met someone she never knew before. And that's a weird feeling to get from a sibling, especially someone you're super close with, you know? So yeah, just disappointment.
What has inspired you and why?
I don't really know where, like, I've gotten inspiration from, you know. I try and find examples. I think that, you know, there's certain moments that I see somebody that I'm close to do something, and then in that instant, it might have inspired me, you know. But,
for example,
you know, my best friend Jen, when he found out he got pregnant pretty young. I think he had his first kid at 19, and you know, we were just kids. We were goofing off, man. We weren't doing anything productive. But because he had gotten pregnant, he was having this kid. He knew he needed to buckle down. He needed to figure this thing out, right? And so he had been working at this restaurant, and it wasn't enough for him just to like wait tables. Like, you can't just wait tables your whole life, you know. But this is also a kid who, because he had a kid on the way, you know, he didn't have time to go to school, so he wasn't trying to. He couldn't go to college to better himself that way. What do you do? You know, like, how do you figure that out? And you know, somehow he turned his situation, which was pretty bleak at that time, and now, I mean, he worked it all the way into ownership of the restaurant that he had been working at. Was that the life he wanted for himself? I don't know, but you know, it's pretty inspiring to see somebody, you know, exhaust every possible option and then make the best possible situation for themselves out of what they have, what they're given. And that's exactly what he did. I mean, and now, you know, he's doing incredibly well. You know, he's got 2 homes. You know, he's a business owner. He's thriving, and I couldn't be more proud of someone. And to see that level of dedication, that is pretty inspiring to myself, you know. But it was over the course of a, you know, a long time, and he veered off that path too. You know, he wasn't always as determined as he could have been or as focused, but I mean, overall, to end up where he's at today it's pretty incredible.
What has been a humbling experience for you? Can you describe your feelings during that experience? I mean, we may have talked about it before, or you can.
Humbling experience. Let's see. I got fired once. Not recently, but I got fired. I got fired once when I was younger, and I remember I was I think I was 19 or 20.
Yeah.
I was working restaurants, right? And I was really good at what I did. I mean, in my mind especially, you know. I worked for this restaurant since, you know, the last 3-4 years or whatever. And I just thought I was indispensable, you know. I thought I was like, I could do whatever I want. You guys can't fire me because what are you going to do without me? You know, that type of ego and that type of mentality. And I showed up later. I can't remember how or why I even got fired, but I got fired. And I remember asking him, I was just like, you know, like, well, what are you going to do without me? Like, well, you guys are in a bad spot if you let me go. You know, I was a punk kid.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this owner of the restaurant. His name was Jay Whitland. He reached under his desk and he grabs out, it was like this thick, applications. And he goes, "You see this?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "There's about 50 of you in here right now." He said, "Not even I am indispensable to this restaurant." And he owned it. You know, he said that this restaurant, that this life that, you know, that we're living, you know, you have to have some humility about it when you go through it, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's just a job. I mean, really, you know, and there are people who do it well and some that don't, and that's great, you know, but if you don't do it with some humility, then you could be the best at what you do and no one's going to want to be around you. And he let me go. And I remember that being like, wow, I mean, he's right, you know, I mean, I am disposable. We all are, you know. To think that you're not only is egotistical, but it's just a poor way to live your life, you know. So that humbled me pretty quickly, yeah.
Go in your mind and think. This life event can be mental, physical, or spiritual. Tell me about a time in your life that you can relate with the word war.
War?
So there's a time in your life where that word, you can attach that word to something.
I mean, if I was to attach to anything, it would be, you know, with my anxiety. Yeah, I had anxiety probably my whole life, but didn't really actually know about it or, you know, could diagnose it until I was probably 18 or 19. Because then it started to physically manifest itself in panic attacks. Yeah. And I was having, you know, real panic attacks to the extent that I had to go see someone about it. And they just explained to me what it was, you know. Oh, well, you suffer from anxiety. You know, my mom has it. You know, it's a chemical imbalance in your brain. So it's genetic, it can be genetic, that it would pass down. So knowing that my mom had it, you know, they had diagnosed me with this anxiety. And ironically, They wanted to put me on medicine, which I was anxious about because I didn't want to take medicine that would change me. It would alter me, because I saw what it did to my mom. It basically, it mutes you. It puts you on this even keel. You don't have any highs and you don't have any lows. And to me, life was not worth living, just straight across the board. You need the highs and you need the lows to appreciate both. And so I didn't want to get on medication. And even up until maybe a year and a half ago, I had this constant internal struggle with myself and this anxiety. I didn't want to tell people about it because, their immediate reaction is to, you need to go to a doctor, go get on medication. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to get on medication. There's got to be alternative medicines, not chemicals that I have to put into my body, but there's got to be other ways I can deal with this anxiety, and so it was just a constant battle of trying to figure out how to balance my daily life, keep up this facade of oh man, Ryan's so fun and outgoing, and deep down I'm terrified. I didn't even there were times I was scared of going to sleep because I thought I just irrationally would just stop breathing and I'd pass away in my sleep. And it really messed with your head. You have crazy irrational thoughts. You can't make sense of it. And again, I didn't want to tell anyone at that time. So I was constantly at war with myself, trying to figure out what I was going to do, because I knew I couldn't go on living another 10 years of life like that. That would have, I don't even know what would have happened. There were times I even had suicidal thoughts, because of it. And I was just I'm not trying to kill myself. I'm not a depressed person, am I? So then I just wanted it to stop, man. And part of that alternative medicine, came in the form of alcohol, trying to self-diagnose and self-medicate through booze. And ironically with that, it makes it worse because you're drinking, and then, when you're hungover, now you're depressed. And then when you're depressed, those thoughts happen. When those thoughts happen, now the anxiety starts to creep in. And it was just a vicious cycle. Then what do you do? What do you do to get rid of the thoughts? You drink. And for years, that's how it was, even though I wasn't intentionally doing it, I didn't really know I was doing it to cure my anxiety. It was just something I was doing. And then, I got sober for a while, and I was able to take a step back. It allowed me to really identify why I was drinking so much and why I was unhappy. And, what was cool though is, you do stop drinking, you start eating healthier, you're taking care of yourself, you're going to the gym, and those things actually were really starting to help cure the anxiety. But I think, the biggest thing for me was just identifying that I had it, and then accepting it and saying, I'm not going to let it consume my life anymore, and I don't need alcohol per se. I don't need, I need to keep my days full. And that was often, as I told you earlier, are the reason why I have those good days, the days that are just full, because then my mind is shut off, it's on autopilot. When I'm able to be by myself and in my thoughts, that's usually when it goes downhill. So
that's a pretty good one. You described to me the thought process. I know there's definitely a physical connection to anxiety. Can you go through the physical?
What it physically feels like is that you're dying of something, The problem is you just don't know what it is, From a physical standpoint, anxiety is, You start getting sweaty palms, increased heart rate out of nowhere for no reason whatsoever. So then naturally, you start thinking, uh-oh, something's wrong with me, right? Because you have that thought now amplifies the increased heart rate, the sweaty palms. Now you become almost dizzy, disoriented. And it literally, it's this vicious circle until it's a full-blown panic attack. It's almost fight or flight. Now you're like, oh my God, this is it. Like I'm gonna die. And what do I do? And these happen, it's in varying levels. Sometimes I can identify and calm myself before it escalates too quickly. And other times I can't tell my brain that I'm okay to shut it off. And if I can't tell my brain it's being irrational, it amplifies it to the point where, you just feel like you're actually dying. So full-blown panic attacks, I've probably had like, a handful, 5 or 6. But anxiety, just that constant uncomfortable physical uncomfortability. I mean, like I said, I've been dealing with that for the last 10 years plus at least.
So the same thing go in your mind, think they can be mental, physical, or spiritual, but tell me about a time in your life that you can relate to the word peace.
Peace. Man. Family vacations, probably. Yeah. And, that's when I feel like everything's cool, Everything's good. I'm with the people I love the most in the world. And, I'm stress-free. Nothing's around to bother me or to upset me. It's just like I'm in the moment, I'm present, I'm peaceful. Unfortunately, those are pretty far and few between. But I definitely remember being on some family trips and just thought like this is how life should be.
Tell me about a truly difficult time in your life and the emotions that came with it, and how did you endure?
To this point, probably the most difficult part of my life was after Hannah and I had broken up. Hannah and I were engaged to be married. We lived together for 5 years, and at 24, it is young, but you're not young.
So you lived together since you were 19?
Since I was 20. So I was 20. We were together, I think, since I was 19. But yeah, she how it ended up coming to a head was that I was working the bar circuit. She had just gotten out of college. She graduated, and she was going into education. So our schedules were just so different. She was working 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. I was working 5 p.m. till sometimes 5 a.m. And often didn't get to see each other. We were struggling through. I remember that first year. But a new school teacher doesn't make a lot of money in Colorado. I think, God, at that time, her starting salary was like $32,000. And, I was working these college bars where I was making $300-$400 a night, working 5 nights a week. I was making probably close to like 70 or 80,000 back then, So we were together, it wasn't like her money, my money, but she felt financially responsible to want to contribute more, even though I told her, it's like, what's it matter at the end of the day? Who pays for what? I don't care. I don't mind that my money goes to the bills and the cars and whatever, just you stay on the path you're on. Don't worry about what we got going on. But she persisted. She wanted to help out. So she got a job at night on the weekends at a bar that I had set her up at in Fort Collins. And there was this guy, always a guy. There's always a guy that you think, you're like, you know we're together, yet I know you're always crossing boundaries. You know, I know you're always pushing, you're always flirting. And I'm not a jealous guy. I always trusted her, so I didn't think anything of it, you know. But there's always that guy that you think, you're like, man, there's something about this guy. I don't like this guy. So fast forward, like whatever it was, 3 months, you know, and it was like 6 a.m. Her phone was blowing up, and I thought it was her alarm going off for work. So I went to go shut it off, and it's like text after text after text from this guy that she worked with at this bar. And I'm just like, oh, don't look. It's probably nothing. God, it's a lot of text messages. So I looked.
And you have anxiety at this time,
I did. I mean, no, of course I had anxiety. It's just through the roof at this point. I can't let it go. And again, I wasn't a jealous guy, but like, what? Why are you, like, there was like 30 text messages, you know. So, of course, I open it up, I look, and it confirmed my worst fear. I mean, she had been cheating on me with this guy, you know, for months. Because when I saw his initial text, it was something to the effect of like, last night was so incredible, when do I get to see you again, you know, which made me want to just instantly throw up. And then I started scrolling through, and I tried to like see how far back these were going. And like I said, it'd been at least a few months. It was sickening. And so I grabbed a duffel bag. She was in the shower. I'll never forget that. She was showering. I looked at her phone. I packed a handful of clothes, left. The reason I knew, you know, that 100% with certainty this had been going on, you know, was I don't leave in the mornings. I think I had just gotten home like 2 hours before that, you know. I don't leave. She always leaves before I leave. I was gone when she got out of the shower, and I didn't get a text or a call from her until 4 o'clock that day. And the text just said, "Can we talk?" And I was like, okay. Unfortunately for her, there wasn't much to talk about on my end. You know, I'm not a jealous person. I'm not, you know, I'm not the type of guy who's controlling. I'm asking like, where are you going, you know? And I knew right then, if I were to talk and forgive her, she's going to turn me into someone I'm not, you know? She was going to make me become a jealous person, because now I can't trust you. The trust's out the window, you know? And so it was a pretty quick talk. I just said, listen, we're done. It's over. Let's just figure out who's going to do what. You know, do you want to, you can have the option. You can either stay at the house or find a new place to live. If you can afford the rent on your own, that's great. I'll move out. It's all up to you. The furniture, whatever you want to keep, it's all yours. I don't care. You take all of it, take none of it. I'll take what's left over. You know, like, I want it to be fairly amicable and you know, mutual. But at the end of the day, you know, I wasn't mad at her. I was just sad. You know, I was sad because we had plans. We had a future together. And so, you know, she'd moved out, and I continued to live at the house and pay the rent. And I mean, it was pretty dark for a couple years. You know, I couldn't get over it. So I moved to Denver. I was living in Fort Collins, and you know, just decided it's time to move on with your life. You can't keep doing the same thing. But that was, yeah, to this point, probably the hardest part of my life, for sure. Oh.
How did first, like, just imagine going through those checks. Any partner or spouse can, you know, makes your stomach turn.
Yeah, it was pretty gut wrenching.
You said you were in a, you know, dark place for a few years. How was it trying to push through those years?
not good. I mean, again, a lot of alcohol. Because at that time too, you know, like we've been talking about with the anxiety, I mean, everything was increased, you know. It was just like an emptiness, you know, like going out with girls that I had no interest in, you know. I'm just trying to fill this void that I had inside of myself, you know. Random hookups on top of, you know, countless hangovers, on top of, you know, distancing myself even from my own families, because, you know, at that time my sister was in a relationship. Both sisters actually were in a relationship. I didn't want to be around relationships. I didn't want to be around people who were in relationships, you know. So, and you know, I needed them. I had this like desire internally to be near people I loved and cared about. I just didn't know it, you know. I wasn't allowing my brain to tell me, like, you know, you need these people in your life. And so instead I was distancing myself from these people, which increased the depression and you know, the drinking, and I was ashamed of myself, you know. God, I didn't want my mom to ever see how gross I had become with alcohol consumption and with just, you know, my overall lifestyle at that time. So yeah, I you know, I just spent a lot of time by myself in those couple years, you know.
Do you think that you were truly forgiven her?
Yes. Yeah, I do. And the reason is, you know, there was a time, because we had mutual friends. So, you know, I'd have to hear about, oh yeah, have you heard about Hannah? No. Oh yeah, she's getting married, and then fast forward, oh, she's having a kid, and she's having a second kid. And I look back and I'm like, you know what? Her life turned out the way she had always wanted it to. And I don't know that I was going to be ready to be that guy, you know, not at 24. The white picket fence, couple of kids, you know, living in Greeley or wherever she's at now. It's like, I don't know. I don't think I could have provided that for her. And so, you know, ultimately I look at it and, you know, and I say, it worked out the way it was supposed to, you know. Granted, it was a really shitty way that it happened, like to get to that realization. But ultimately we ended up exactly where we were supposed to. You know, she's with a guy who could have given her those things at that time. And I wasn't, you know. And, you know, it's true about relationships. You know, relationships are 50% love and 50% timing. And the timing for us just, I don't think it was going to ever be right. And so was I upset that it happened the way it happened at that time? Of course. But looking back now where I'm at my current life, 100%. Like if I saw her to this day and you know, she asked me to forgive her, I'd say, I forgive you 100%. I don't hold any ill will toward her or any grudges. But that was, you know, I mean, the only thing that really could have healed that for me was time, you know, which I had. So
tell me about a truly joyous moment in your life and how that felt.
Joyous moment in my life. I got this wine director job in San Diego that a lot of people had applied for, and I was on a very, very long list of candidates, and I beat all of them out. And the reason it was so joyous is because in the restaurant industry, you know, it's typically who you know and not what you know. You know, it's a lot of connections, and I didn't know anyone. I mean, I was literally just a random candidate off the street. To that point, all my jobs that I had gotten were from a referral, like somebody I knew who had an in with management or whoever, and I was able to get, you know, hired on. Though my resume is pretty extensive and I do have a lot of experience, you know, this was all on me. You know, I didn't have anyone else to fall back on. And when I got that job, I just remember, like, I mean, that was probably like the most accomplished I'd felt. I was like, I did this on my own. I didn't need anyone else's help. No one, lent any hands out, and I had no safety nets. It was just me, and I went through a pretty extensive interview process. And like I said, I'd never been through probably more than one interview and didn't get the job, and this was like, all right, well, we'll call you back in a week. We'll set up a new, interview, whatever. And I went up the totem pole, and I remember when I got that call, I was like, dude, you did it. I don't know how. I honestly, to this day, I don't know how I did it, but that was for sure like one of the more joyous moments I've ever had, for sure.
What would you say keeps you up at night? And why does it?
Well, for a while it was anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, I was afraid to fall asleep, And now, it's just random thoughts. It's hard for me to shut my brain off. It's always racing. So now, those thoughts of anxiety are now more thoughts of like future for me. Like, where am I going? What am I going to do next? Where do I want my life to end up in 4 or 5 years? Like, am I on the right path? Am I doing the right things? Was I a better person today than I was yesterday? Like, those kind of thoughts keep me up at night. My mind's constantly racing. But 3 hours of SportsCenter reruns, and then I end up knocking right out. So,
what keeps you going every day?
That's a good question. I don't know. Just the day. How do you answer that question? Goals, I think ultimately, like, I have goals for my life. There are times that, it's like those goals aren't even being worked towards because, you have to do other things. I have to work a job that I don't necessarily want to work, but I need to be able to pay bills, and to be able to do things that I want to do. And so, that generally, is why I'm up every day. But yeah, that's a tough question. I don't know.
Imagine you're in the hospital today.
Okay.
You only have hours to live.
Yeah.
What are your regrets?
Whew. That's a great question. I could say this with almost 100% certainty. I almost don't have any regrets.
If you had to pick one.
If I had any one regret, not finishing college. I think that moment, I remember when I didn't finish college, I took time off school to help financially pay for things in Hannah and in my relationship. And then I was always intending to go back, but I never did. And then, ultimately you just start getting into a routine. I was tending bar, I was making good money, or what I thought was good money, but it was a grind. I wish I'd have just stuck it out and done something that I really wanted to do in my life. I've always figured it out. I've always gotten there, but like, sometimes I think like, man, I could have been more than this. Did I waste potential? Did I waste, talents that I had that I didn't utilize or accentuate or expand upon? And so, yeah, I think if I had one regret, that would be it. But even that, I'm like, I don't know, because my life turned out pretty good.
You're obviously alive. You're going to make it. Do you feel at this point in time, knowing what you know now, that you can change? or make amends with that regret?
I mean, sure, I could go back to college, right? But I'm 30.
Do what you really wanted. I mean, because you said two things. Not college was a part of it. Another part of it was reaching your full potential.
Right. So the reason I think college would have opened up my eyes to other things, other opportunities, right? Maybe things I didn't even think that I wanted to do or that interested me. But now at 32, if I went back to college, I don't think my eyes are going to be as opened. I don't think I'm going to be as open to new opportunities because, at 32 now I have other goals, right? Like I want to.
So you have other goals at 32. Do you feel now at this point that you can hit those goals as to where you're not on a deathbed from it going from being in the college to now you have new goals as to where you won't have any regrets?
No, I think you're always going to, as you live life, there's going to be another thing that you maybe didn't do or a path you went down or whatever that now might open itself up to new regret, right? I'm like, in my mind, a goal of mine is to have a family.
Okay.
That also could end up being a regret. Do you know what I mean? I might end up marrying someone that ends up being horrible for me, but I never saw it at that time because I was infatuated or I was in love.
So you'll never know until you hit that mark.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
better to know than to wonder.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, from that standpoint, I don't have regrets that way. If there's an opportunity presented to me, almost always I try and take that opportunity. Like I try and say yes more than I say no. Sometimes those yeses end up becoming regrets, ironically, but yeah, no, I want to start a family and I want a job that I don't hate, but like, at the end of the day, I think it's extremely rare for someone to do what they love every single day and make the type of money that they need to make to do other things in their life to meet those other goals. I love traveling. I love, exploring new places. And unfortunately, that's not cheap. And it's like to get both, I mean, it's so rare. And I just think work's a grind in general. Is it the money that makes you happy? Is it the type of work that you're doing that makes you happy? I haven't really been able to decipher. So for me, it's just like, I think it's something that you can at least mostly enjoy doing and still make pretty good money at. Somewhere like that happy medium is kind of my sweet spot now for where I'm at in my life. I'm not trying to I know I'm not going to make $1 million a year doing something I love to do. So, you just got to be realistic with yourself at a certain point and say, be happy with the blessings you do have and the opportunities that you are presented in front of you right now.
You told me that as a kid your dreams were to be an actor. What are your dreams now?
Definitely not be an actor. I mean, that's crazy. But I would probably, my dreams now, again, were to have a family, to work a job that can provide a good life for my family, but also allow me time to spend with them. Like I have so many friends. The one I even mentioned, he's providing a great life for his family, but at what cost, right? He hardly gets to see his kids. He's working really, really terrible hours. His relationship is, falling apart, essentially. I mean, it's just like, all for what? What's it worth? Plus, he doesn't have any time for himself. Like he can't travel. He can't go out on weekends. He's working nights. He's missing life. Doing what he's doing, and I don't want that to be my life. I want to live a comfortable life, but I mean, time is the one thing money can't buy you. You know what I mean? So that's, for me, that's it. I want to live a great life with a family. Yeah, I want to start a family of my own. I want to.
You're the author of your life, but how do the last chapters end? And it can end in any way or fashion. How does it feel when it ends the way that you see it?
If like I could write it like picture perfect.
Your picture perfect ending.
I think it would just be, I'd be here in Colorado. All my kids and my grandkids would be here in Colorado, right? I'd be within a pretty close proximity to them. We'd have, family gatherings at our place. I'd have a great relationship with both kids, grandkids, my siblings. And toward the very end of it, I want to be the first to go peacefully in my sleep. And I want them to celebrate my life. I don't want a funeral. I just want like everyone to just, have a party and remember me. And shit, that is a weird thing to think about, dude. The end, like writing how you end it. Yeah, that's weird. Ugh, it kind of creeps me out a little bit, actually.
Yeah. How would it feel? That's a satisfying ending for you?
That would be fine with me. Yeah, I just want to be surrounded by all my loved ones, and like if in a perfect world, I mean, yeah, my final, like my last night on earth, if you will, would be spent with all my family gathered around the dinner table, eating, drinking, having a great time, just sharing one last memory, and then, me peacefully passing away in my sleep. I don't want to go painfully.
Not while you're having an anxiety attack.
Hopefully the anxiety's gone by then. Hopefully that's all done.
That's it, bro.
Is that it?
That's it.
Nice, bro. That's what's up.